All right, let's get right into it. If you're prepping for the USMLE, MRCP, or PLAB, this one's for you. Today, we're going to tune our ears to the rhythm of the heart. Now, I know we live in an age of fancy imaging, but trust me, your stethoscope is still one of the most powerful diagnostic tools you have, especially on exam day. Mastering cardiac auscultation is your ticket to acing those tough cardiology questions. So let's dive in and decode the language of the heart together. So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the absolute non-negotiable rules of auscultation. Then we'll deep dive into S1, the first heart sound, and then S2. After that, we'll get to the really cool stuff, dynamic maneuvers. This is your secret weapon for tricky diagnoses. And we'll wrap it all up with a lightning round of spot diagnoses that you've just got to know for the boards. It's a step-by-step journey from the fundamentals all the way to mastery. Okay, first things first. Before you can understand the story the heart is telling you, you have to learn its language. Think of these next couple of principles as the fundamental grammar of heart sounds. Get these down, and everything else we talk about today will just click into place.
Okay, if you remember one thing from this entire explainer, make it this. It is so simple, but so important. Normal heart sounds, your classic lub-dub, are created only when valves are closing. That's it. S1 is the mitral and tricuspid valves closing. S2 is the aortic and pulmonary valves closing. So what does it mean if you hear a sound when a valve opens? It means trouble. In opening sounds like a snap or a click is always pathological. It's a massive red flag that almost always points to a stenotic or stiff valve. Closing is good, opening is bad. Got it? Now, where do we actually listen? This trips a lot of people up because intuitively you'd think you listen right over the valve. But that's not how it works. You have to listen where the sound radiates to. You follow the direction of blood flow. So for the aortic valve, the sound is carried up the aorta, which is why we listen in the second intercostal space on the right. For the mitral valve, the sound radiates towards the apex of the heart. You're not listening to the valve, you're listening to where the blood carries the sound. Just follow the flow. Let's zoom in on our first sound, S1, the lub. This is the sound that kicks off systole. It's the starting pistol for ventricular contraction. But don't let its simplicity fool you. This one little sound can tell you a ton about what's going on inside the heart. So here's a little secret about S1. It's not actually one sound. It's two sounds happening almost at the same time. You have the mitral valve closing, M1, and then a fraction of a second later, the tricuspid valve closes, T1. Normally, they're so close together that your ear just hears one single lub. But what if you hear a lullub? That split tells you that the tricuspid valve is late to the party, and the number one cause for that delay, a right bundle branch block. The electrical signal to the right ventricle is slowed down, so T1 closes late. For your exams, you hear split S1, your brain should immediately go to RBBB for bonus points also associated with Ebstein's anomaly. Now, why is S1 sometimes loud and sometimes soft? It all comes down to one beautiful, simple principle of physics. I want you to clap your hands. If you start with your hands far apart and bring them together, bam, loud, right? Now start with them almost touching. It's just a little tap. It's the exact same thing with the valve leaflets. The more distance they have to travel to slam shut, the louder that S1 is going to be.
So let's put that principle into practice. When would the valve leaflets be caught wide open? Well, in tachycardia, or a short PR interval, the heart's contracting so fast that the leaflets get no time to drift shut. They get slammed shut from a wide open position. That's a loud S1. Same deal with mitral stenosis. The pressure in the atrium is so high that it physically holds those leaflets wide open until the last possible second. The ventricle contracts, wham, another loud S1. It all makes perfect sense when you think about the physics.
And you guessed it, the opposite is true for a soft S1. If you have a long PR interval, there's this long delay before the ventricle contracts. During that time, the leaflets just kind of float almost all the way closed. So when the contraction finally happens, it's that soft little tap, a muffled S1. And in severe regurgitation, the leaflets are so floppy and leaky that they don't even close properly, which of course gives you a very soft or sometimes even an absent S1. Okay, we've nailed the lub. Now it's time for the dub, S2. This sound marks the end of systole, and it's made by the aortic, A2, and pulmonary, P2, valves closing. And just like with S1, the diagnostic gold is hidden in how this sound splits and how loud it is. Now, here's where things get really cool. Remember how a split S1 is basically always a bad sign? Well, a split S2 can be completely normal. It's called physiological splitting, and it's a sign of a healthy heart. Here's how it works. When you take a deep breath in, you create negative pressure in your chest that pulls more blood into the right side of your heart. It takes a little longer to pump that extra blood out, so the pulmonary valve, P2, closes a little late. You hear a split. Then, when you breathe out, it all goes back to normal and the sound becomes single again. That variation with breathing is the key. So if the split doesn't vary with breathing, you're in pathological territory, and this is pure exam gold, so lean in. A wide split is one you hear all the time, both breathing in and out. Think RBB. That delayed right side is always late. Then you have the fixed split. This one is huge. It doesn't change at all with breathing. If you hear a fixed split S2, your brain should be screaming atrial septal defect. It's pathogenomic for an ASD. And finally, the weird one, the paradoxical split. It does the opposite. It splits on expiration. This tells you the aortic valve is late, so think left bundle branch block or severe aortic stenosis. And for the loudness of S2, the rule is even simpler. It's all about pressure. Think of it like a door slamming shut. The more force, or pressure, behind it, the louder the slam. It's a direct relationship. High pressure in the aorta or pulmonary artery means those valves are going to slam shut with more force, creating a louder sound. Let's apply that. You hear a loud, sharp A2, that tells you there's high pressure in the aorta, systemic hypertension. You hear a loud P2, that's high pressure in the pulmonary artery, pulmonary hypertension. It's that straightforward. On the flip side, a soft S2 component means low pressure, which you'll find downstream from a stenosis. In severe aortic stenosis, the valve is so stiff and barely moves that the A2 component becomes very soft, or might even disappear entirely. It always comes back to pressure. Now we get to my favorite part. This is where we go from just listening to actively investigating. You've heard a murmur, but you're not quite sure which one it is. Dynamic maneuvers are how we manipulate the hemodynamics of the heart to make it reveal its secrets. This is how you clinch the diagnosis. So picture it. You're in an exam reading a clinical vignette. They describe a murmur. Now what? How do you move from a list of possibilities to the one correct answer? The solution is to use these maneuvers to make the murmur change, to make it work for you. This table right here is pure gold. You should screenshot this, memorize it, dream about it. Basically, we're playing with two things. Preload, which is the blood filling the heart, and afterload, which is the resistance the heart pumps against. The general rule is this. Maneuvers that decrease blood return to the heart, like a Valsalva, make most murmurs softer. Maneuvers that increase blood return, like squatting, make most murmurs louder. But notice I said most, because there are two huge exceptions you have to know. And here it is. This is the single most high-yield fact in this section. The murmurs of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, HOCM, and mitral valve prolapse do the complete opposite of everything else. I'll say it again. They do the opposite. When you decrease the amount of blood in the heart with a Valsalva, these murmurs get louder. When you increase the blood in the heart by squatting, they get softer. HOCM and MVP are the rebels. They break all the rules. Burn this into your memory. Okay, let's finish up with a lightning round. These are the classic named murmurs that love to show up as spot diagnosis questions on exams. You hear the description, you should instantly know the condition. These are free points if you know them. Let's fly through these. An Austin Flint murmur? That's the diastolic rumble you hear in severe aortic regurgitation. The Graham-Steele murmur? That's from pulmonary regurgitation thanks to severe pulmonary hypertension. Carvalho's sign? Super easy. It just means a right-sided murmur gets louder when you breathe in. The Gibson murmur? If you ever see the words continuous machinery-like murmur, it is always a patent ductus arteriosus. It's a dead giveaway. And finally, Doc's murmur is a continuous murmur over the LAD artery, pointing to severe stenosis. Know these, and you'll be banking easy points on exam day. So for our final thought, a little challenge. You place your stethoscope on the chest, and you hear a scratchy, grating sound. It has 3 parts to it, and it sounds like 2 pieces of leather rubbing together. What is the one diagnosis that perfectly fits that picture? I'll give you a second. Got it? If you're thinking pericarditis with its classic pericardial friction rub, you are 100% correct. You are well on your way to mastering the language of the heart.